Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know how sometimes you're reading an article, maybe a really insightful one, and you feel like you're getting it, mostly. But then there's that one word, or maybe a phrase, that just stops you. Makes you wonder if you're really getting the whole picture, the author's full intent. Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're zeroing in on some key terms from a really fascinating piece called D184, Can China Cope with a Deindustrialized Future? Our goal here is to sort of unpack this vocabulary so by the end, you'll have a much richer grasp of this whole crucial economic discussion around China. Okay, let's jump right in. First up, a phrase with a lot of historical baggage, manifest destiny, the article says. In their view, the country's manifest destiny lies in high-tech manufacturing. That's not a throwaway line, is it?
No, absolutely not. Manifest destiny isn't just descriptive. It's a noun phrase, and it carries this powerful sense of, well, inevitability. Almost like a divine right. It refers to this really deep belief, this conviction that a certain outcome, a specific role, is just natural, obvious, unavoidable even for a nation. So, applying it to China here, it suggests their leaders see dominating high-tech manufacturing not just as, a good idea or a strategic goal, but as the country's preordained path. Like it's written in the stars, their unavoidable destiny for growth and global standing.
Right. So it's much heavier than just, say, an economic strategy. It feels almost like a core belief, part of their national identity, this path they must follow.
Precisely. And to really feel the weight, you have to think about its original context, right? That 19th century American idea of a God-given right to expand westward. It wasn't just about land, it was destiny. The opposite idea would be something like an accidental fate, or maybe an uncertain future, where things just happen by chance. You might say, for instance, a company's success was just sheer luck. Definitely not its manifest destiny. And what's so interesting here is how the article uses it. It really emphasizes that for China's leaders, high-tech isn't just a choice they hope to make work. It's framed as this unavoidable mission, something fundamental to their future. It tells you a lot about the sheer scale of their ambition.
That definitely sets a strong tone. Okay, building on that idea of a destined path, the article mentions a specific ambition using our next word. It says, the government covets what it calls a complete industrial system, which will reduce China's reliance on foreigners and raise their reliance on it. Now, covets, that feels pretty intense.
Oh, it absolutely is. Covet, the verb, means to desire something really strongly, to long for it. Often it's something that belongs to someone else or something seen as incredibly valuable. Using covet here, well, it perfectly captures the Chinese government's intense desire, you could almost say yearning for this fully integrated, self-sufficient industrial setup. It's not just a target, it's like this treasured prize they're aiming for, specifically to cut dependence on others and, crucially, make others more dependent on them.
So it's not just wanting, it's got this edge of possession, maybe even envy, like looking at something someone else has and desperately wanting it for yourself.
That's a really good way to put it. That feeling of intense longing is definitely there. Think about it. Someone might covet their competitor's advanced technology, right? The opposite. That would be to reject something or just be indifferent to it, showing no desire at all. Like a country might reject global trade rules instead of coveting a dominant position. So in this sentence, covet really underscores China's drive for self-reliance. It's not just a preference. It's seen as absolutely essential, incredibly valuable for their economic future and influence. There's a real strategic, maybe even emotional weight behind it.
That kind of intense focus, that coveting, sounds powerful.
Right.
But can it become too much? The article hints at a potential problem with our next term. But China's preoccupation with high-tech industry is running into limits. Preoccupation. That suggests being totally absorbed, maybe even obsessed.
It does lean that way, yes. Preoccupation is a noun. It describes this intense focus, this deep concern or absorption with one thing. Often, to the point where other things might get neglected. The article uses it to show just how strongly, almost singularly, China is fixated on building up its high-tech sector. It's more than just planning. It feels like an all-consuming drive.
Okay, so it's not just about setting priorities. It's a level of focus that might actually throw things out of balance elsewhere. What kind of limits or risks could come from such a strong preoccupation?
That's the key question, isn't it? You could imagine, maybe historically, a nation so preoccupied with military power that its own economy suffers. The opposite of preoccupation would be something like neglect or disinterest, a lack of focus. Maybe a government neglects farming because it's preoccupied with factories. Here, preoccupation really drives home how China seems almost single-minded about high-tech. It implies that while this focus is strong, it might lead to, say, putting too many resources in one basket, maybe market saturation, or even an economy that isn't as diverse or resilient across other important areas. It suggests this intense pursuit, understandable as it is, comes with trade-offs.
That makes a lot of sense. And this kind of intense focus, it often creates its own problems, doesn't it? Internal challenges. The article says China's leaders have had to inveigh against a specific type of competition within their own system. The quote is, "For the past year, China's leaders have inveighed against involutionary competition efforts to gain market share that oblige rivals to follow suit, hurting everyone's profits." Inveigh? That sounds pretty harsh.
It is. It's a strong verb. To inveigh means to speak out or write about something with real hostility, forcibly, critically. The article uses it to show that China's leaders aren't just, mildly concerned. They are sharply, maybe even angrily, criticizing this destructive kind of market behavior they label involutionary competition. It's not a polite discussion, it's a strong condemnation.
Right, like they're really publicly attacking, railing against this race to the bottom that ends up harming everyone involved. What exactly is this involutionary competition they're so worried about?
Yeah, this is a really important idea. Involutionary competition basically describes a situation where everyone's competing fiercely, often in a zero-sum way, but it doesn't lead to real progress or innovation. It just leads to diminishing returns for everybody. Think of it like a spiral downwards. Companies maybe cut prices drastically or skimp on quality or just burn through resources trying to grab a tiny bit more market share. That forces their rivals to do the same thing. And in the end, everyone's profits get squeezed and it's not sustainable. The opposite of inveighing against something would be, well, to praise it or endorse it, like a government might praise a new tax cut. Here, inveigh really highlights the leaders' strong language. It signals they see this involutionary competition as a serious threat to the health, the long-term future of their industries. They're moving past simple concern to open, forceful condemnation. It's a warning sign against growth that just eats itself.
Okay, so they're pushing back against a cycle that hurts their own economy. Interesting. Now let's shift gears slightly to how we talk about these complex ideas, how they get named. The article says, China may fear a phenomenon christened cost disease by William Baumol, an economist. To christen something, that sounds like a pretty big deal, like giving something its official name.
It absolutely is. To christen, used as a verb here, means to give something a name, often for the very first time, or maybe to label it in a way that really defines how people understand it from then on. In this sentence, it's telling us that the economist, William Baumol, he didn't just describe a trend. He formally named it. He coined the term cost disease, and that act really framed how we've discussed this economic pattern ever since.
So he basically gave this concept its identity, and that name shapes how we think about it, how we discuss it. What's the power in giving something a name like cost disease? Sounds a bit ominous.
Well, think about naming a new scientific finding, right? That name becomes the label, the reference point everyone uses. The opposite would be to leave something, unnamed or anonymous. Undefined, like a new species might stay unnamed until it's officially classified. Here, Christened shows us Baumol did more than just describe the issue of rising costs in certain sectors, especially services. He gave it this catchy, memorable name, cost disease. And that fundamentally shaped how economists, policymakers, everyone really, came to think about and debate it. It stuck. It provided a powerful mental hook.
And names definitely influence perception, don't they, for better or worse? Okay, moving from specific economic terms to broader urban issues, the article describes a challenge using this word, and China's urban sprawl makes it difficult to reap the economies of density that big cities usually provide. Sprawl. That paints quite a picture.
It really does. Sprawl, the noun, describes this kind of uncontrolled expansion, often haphazard. Usually we talk about urban sprawl cities just spreading outwards, often in a messy, inefficient way. In this context, it's describing China's huge, scattered urban growth. And the point is, this kind of expansion, ironically, actually limits the benefits you'd normally expect from dense city living. It turns a potential advantage into a problem.
So it's not just about getting bigger, it's about how cities get bigger. This spread out, inefficient growth actually stops them from getting the usual perks of being a big city. What exactly are these economies of density they're missing out on?
Yes, that's exactly the issue. A common example of sprawl's downside. Think longer commutes, higher costs for roads and pipes, more pollution. All things many modern cities struggle with. The opposite of sprawl would be compactness, Or concentration. Dense, efficient, well-organized urban areas. A compact city, for example, can make public transport super effective. So in this sentence, Sprawl really highlights a basic inefficiency in how China's cities are laid out right now. They're just too spread out to really capture the benefits, the economies that density usually provides. Things like lower infrastructure costs per person, shorter travel times for workers and goods, and also that knowledge spillover effect where ideas spread faster when people and firms are close together.
That really clarifies the hidden costs of sprawl. Okay, so let's stick with that idea for a moment and look closer at that phrase, reap the economies of density. You explain the economies, but reap, that sounds like harvesting something, getting a benefit.
It does, yes. Reap the economies of is a verb phrase. It just means gaining the advantages, the benefits that come from a particular situation, usually economic efficiency or cost savings. Here, it's talking specifically about how big cities normally benefit from increased productivity, efficiency gains, just because they have lots of people and businesses packed closely together. It's about actually getting those benefits.
Okay. So China's urban growth pattern, this sprawl, means they're effectively failing to harvest these natural advantages. They're missing out on the efficiency boost that big cities should automatically provide.
Exactly right. Think about business mergers. Companies merge often to reap the economies of scale. They combine operations, cut duplicate costs, become more efficient. The opposite of reaping benefits, well, you could miss out on them, or even suffer diseconomies of something like being hurt by inefficiencies. For example, a poorly planned city might suffer the diseconomies of congestion, terrible traffic, high pollution costs, instead of reaping the benefits of growth. So this phrase, reap the economies of, it points to a really significant missed opportunity. China's cities, because of how they've grown, aren't fully generating the productivity and wealth advantages that denser, more efficiently designed urban areas usually offer. It's a major structural issue.
Got it. So we had these challenges, terms like cost, disease, that sound inherently negative, but then the article throws a curveball with our next term. Although it sounds painful, it is not, strictly speaking, a malady at all. Malady. That definitely sounds like something bad, an illness or a problem. But the article says, maybe not?
Right. It's a bit counterintuitive. A malady, as a noun, usually means a disease, a disorder, or some kind of serious problem affecting a system, a person, or society. We often use it figuratively for economic or social troubles, implying something is fundamentally wrong or harmful. But here, the article cleverly uses the word to then say, hold on, cost disease, even though it sounds bad, isn't actually a true malady in the damaging sense, at least not necessarily for an economy like China's at this stage.
So the name itself is kind of misleading. It sounds like a sickness, but maybe it's just a symptom of something else, something potentially normal or even positive. How could that be?
Yeah, this is where you need to understand the economics behind it. We often talk about corruption as a malady undermining democracy, right? That's clearly bad. The opposite of a malady is a remedy or just health. But Baumol's cost disease. It often happens when productivity in making goods grows much faster than productivity in providing services. Think manufacturing versus haircuts or teaching. This productivity gap pushes wages up everywhere, but service costs rise faster because service wages have to keep up to attract workers, even if productivity isn't booming there. So what looks like a malady rising service prices can actually just be a reflection of healthy wage growth overall, driven by gains in other parts of the economy. For China, it could signal a natural shift toward a more service-based economy as it gets richer.
Wow, okay. That totally reframes it. What sounds like a sickness is maybe just a growing pain, a sign of economic evolution. And speaking of unexpected positives, let's wrap up with a really interesting final point captured by our last word. Moreover, in China's case, these forces would bring a consolation. Baumol's cost disease is nothing to fear. It could even be the force that finally makes China number one. Consolation suggests finding something good in a difficult situation.
Exactly. Consolation, the noun, is something that provides comfort or maybe a positive aspect when you're facing difficulty or disappointment, a silver lining, basically. The article uses it here to highlight this surprising, almost paradoxical upside for China. Even though cost disease usually means rising service prices, which sounds bad, for China, this very phenomenon could actually help them catch up to the U.S. in GDP terms.
Oh.
Because as their service sector grows and becomes more expensive, its value in GDP calculations goes up. It inflates that part of their economy on paper. So it's about finding this hidden potential benefit within what seems like an economic headache.
Right. So what looks like a weakness, or at least a challenge, these rising service prices linked to cost disease, could actually turn into a strategic plus,
almost like an unexpected twist that helps China in the global economic rankings.
Precisely that. You know, on a personal level, you might find consolation in the lessons you learned from a failure. The opposite is just plain disappointment or setback with no upside. Here, consolation really underlines this clever argument. What seems like a downside rising service costs as China's economy matures could, because of how we measure GDP, paradoxically become a hidden engine, helping them close the gap with competitors. It really makes you question assumptions about what economic strength looks like.
Wow. It really is amazing how much deeper you can get into an article just by focusing on a few key words, isn't it? Understanding their specific meaning, their weight. From the almost fated path of manifest destiny to the surprising consolation in rising costs, these terms truly unlock the nuances of China's economic story.
Absolutely. Language is so much more than just passing information back and forth. It really shapes how we see things, how we understand complex issues like national strategy or global economics. You know, one carefully chosen word can shift the whole frame of an argument, revealing things you didn't see before.
So maybe the next time you hit one of those words in a complex piece, a word that feels strong or maybe just unfamiliar, take a moment. Ask yourself, what's really packed into that term? What assumptions might it be carrying? And how does getting clear on it change your view of the whole topic? What deeper story might it be trying to tell you? Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We hope you feel a bit more equipped now to decode the language shaping our understanding of global economics and China's complex future.